I just had to block my grandmother. I had to end my relationship with my grandmother today because she was attacking me. So my friend and I created a podcast called Adopt a Gals Podcast, and it's just talking about the experiences that we've experienced as Black children adopted into a white family. And the reason why we started this podcast is one, to heal, and two, to also create a space for adopted people that are like us and to also help them heal, to create some type of safe space for them to come and have discussions and stuff like that. And of course, we start this podcast and we talk about the bad and the good. And I started talking about the bad things that I experienced with my wife family. And my grandmother was upset about it, and she was telling me, she was calling me selfish and that I was angry. I'm trying to get back at my family for starting this podcast. It has nothing to do with adopted kids. And I'm like, that's the furthest thing from the truth. That's not why we started it. And she's saying all this stuff because they don't like when I speak the truth about adoption. It's one of the things that I experience, and it's becoming very clear as a black kid being adopted into a white family. You are just supposed to sit in the corner and not say anything, and just take the fact that, oh, you got adopted and that's it. You should just be grateful no matter what, even though you've had certain experiences before your adoption and during your adoption. And it's like I wasn't allowed to talk about that stuff. And I ended my relationship with my family about a year and a half ago. My adopted family, my mother blocked me, my whole family blocked me. They didn't go to my wedding. Nobody showed up for my wedding at all. Simply because I was speaking on some of the truths and things that I have experienced as a Black adopted child. And they just could not understand that. They took it as I'm ungrateful, which is furthest thing from the truth. And my whole life, I've always told them how grateful I am. And part of the reason why we no longer speak is because, one, I felt so demonized with my family and in me trying to be who I am, and they just did not see me. They didn't understand who I am as a Black kid, as a Black child, and the different things that I may face. They had created this box for me that they wanted me to be a part of, and because I was fitting into those boxes, it was some issues. And granted, that's not to say they were horrible people to me. They were not horrible people to me. They were great people to me. They gave me a great life. They put me in a good education system. I was, all my needs and a lot of my wants were met. So there were really good things, and I love, till this day, I love and care about my family. And even though I'm telling this story, please do not try to find my family to try and attack them or anything like that, because I'm not okay with that. Because at the end of the day, I still love them. But where the struggle was that came in is that they didn't want me. They didn't want to hear me. They didn't want to hear some of the things that happened that were not necessarily okay. And all I wanted was just for them to hear me and for them to just hear my story and to understand. And my grandmother, who saw some things that were happening that were not okay, she never stood up for me. She never did anything for me in that regard of standing up for me or saying anything verbal. And she would talk to me about it. She's like, oh, yeah, that's not right. Them doing that, that was not right. I always think about you. And I'm like, okay. So then now that I'm an adult and I'm starting my story, I'm telling my story, and she's not okay with it because she feels like me speaking about the bad is me hurting my family, and me talking about it is disgraceful in a way. And so now I had a conversation, and I was telling her this is the reason why we started the podcast. And she's like, well, I can't support you. And I'm like, that's fine, you don't have to support me. So now what she's doing, every on one I made a post about Adopt a Gals podcast, and I was just thanking my family on the things that they've done for me, because at the end of the day, the podcast is talking about the good and the bad. And she's now attacking me underneath my post, talking about, you're just doing this for yourself. It has nothing to do for adoptees. Like, this is too late for you to post this. You had heard a lot of people doing this podcast. And I'm like, well, this is crazy, because now it seems like now you are on the side of my adoptive family, where for so long they have attacked, demonized me, and made me out to be somebody that I'm not. And now I feel like I have to cut you off out of my life in order for me to move on and do what I'm supposed to do. Because I really feel like me talking about this podcast is something that I was meant to do, and that is what I was called to do. And a lot of times we go through things in life that don't make sense, that are very, very deeply hurtful. And even though you go through some of that stuff, sometimes your pain and the things that you've experienced, you are supposed to learn from that, and you're supposed to help people from that. And that's where I feel like I am with this podcast. And there's been so much pain that has been inflicted with my adoptive family. And I've been just trying to get away from it. I've been trying to get away from it. And I thought my grandma was a safe space because she heard me and she heard my pain and the things that I have been through. And she still turned around and she still demonized me and attacked me just like how my adoptive family did. And at the end of the day, she can do all of this. She can try to attack me. I blocked her. I blocked her number. I blocked her on my social media. I'm going to block her from all my other social medias because at the end of the day, I don't want her to bring that negativity to our podcast because this is not meant for her. It's not meant for me. Like, this podcast is bigger than me. It's bigger than my family. It's something that's supposed to be healing, and we're getting really good responses from people who understand, and adoptees, have found this, like, oh my gosh, I'm so happy that there's somebody out there that's like me. Like, thank you so much for starting this channel. And they will not stop me from my purpose. They will not stop me from speaking the truth. And one thing that I have to be cognizant of, even though I'm sad and I'm angry about the treatment that I received, especially like them completely abandoning me completely on my wedding day. And there's been times where when things were bad, I put aside my feelings and I still showed up when it was needed. And when I needed them the most this time, they started making excuses. They started coming up with different things because with me growing up, there was always certain stipulations when it came to things that was for me. And so it was starting to look like that. And I became angry about it. And I became like, okay, if you guys continue to treat me like this, I don't want you to be part of my life. And when I said that, I was assuming they would try to hear me and understand me. So they assumed that, oh, you don't want us to be part of your life. And so my mother blocked me, everybody blocked me. And I was, and I was by myself on my wedding day, and it was so embarrassing. But I had my cousin, my only family member was there, my cousin and my best friend, who I consider as my family. They were there to support me. And also at the same time, my husband's family has been so welcoming and so generous. They were there, they were upholding me. And one thing I've realized about my life and the things that I go through, God always has somebody in place for me when I fall. Either if somebody kicks me down on the ground, he always has somebody for me to get up, to hold me together. And even though that day was so heartbreaking, I still was able to enjoy my wedding and enjoy the people that were there, the people that came to support me. And I just feel like I'm at a part of my journey where I will not stop doing what is best for me and growing and healing, no matter whoever tries to attack me. And so if you're somebody out there who's experienced what I'm experiencing, continue your journey. Don't stop. Keep going.